Hello, everyone. This is Mark Zacco speaking, and welcome to Supercharged, another one of our talks from the SAE Detroit section. Today, we're going to be talking about scholarship opportunities, and we have a guest with us today who's going to be telling us about her journey and the opportunities that she have won and the career that she's pursuing, that those scholarship opportunities from SAE Detroit section have enabled. So to begin with, we want to talk to you about our mission at SAE Detroit section. SAE Detroit section, where I'm a vice chair of currently, is the mission there is to provide localized opportunities here in the greater Detroit area for advancing mobility and the knowledge and solutions for all of our benefit, for humanity. And as such, we have the opportunity through the Detroit section to offer scholarships to students here in the greater Detroit area. It's a competitive scholarship opportunity. And today we have one of the winners. Bianca Pohl is a student from currently, she's attending University of Chicago. She won the scholarship last year in 2020. And she's going to discuss those opportunities, what she went through in terms of that section scholarship application, what led her to the science and technology and engineering, math, the STEM journey that she's on. And hopefully we'll learn out there as, well, maybe you can get some pointers for your scholarship application, those students and parents that might be interested in helping their community out. So Bianca, welcome to Supercharged, and happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how are things going there in Chicago across the lake?
Sure. So I just started my winter quarter, my second quarter as a freshman at the University of Chicago. I'm going to be majoring in physics, and I'm currently in a bunch of STEM classes and very excited to continue my journey, which has taken me all throughout elementary, middle, and high school, and ended up with dropping me in the middle of Chicago. But I'm glad to get back to my Michigan roots. I went to high school in White Lake at the International Academy West, and now I'm here.
Well, that's wonderful. So we're going to talk a little bit about that STEM journey and what it inspired you. Maybe you had some role models that you could share some of your inspirations from them, and what got you into that program, majoring in physics over there at the University of Chicago. So you mentioned your high school. I know that's a very competitive high school that you had to get into, and probably even before that, though, you started your journey. What kind of early influences did you have and that brought you to where you are today? Could you share a little bit about that, please?
Sure. So my biggest influences, honestly, were my science teachers in middle and high school. In middle school, my science teacher was fantastic, and he truly had a passion for what he was teaching. And I think that was my first exposure to more like advanced science than, elementary school. And his kind of support and his passion kind of, started me on this journey. And then in high school, my physics teacher actually was one of my biggest role models. She was also the coach for our school science Olympiad team. And again, she was also super passionate about what she was teaching. And, that really rubs off on students. And she cared so much about her students. And it was just so nice to see someone succeed and also like love where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's part of your journey, but it's also the opportunities of teachers and influencers there and in a student's life to help them along their journey. I think we all appreciate and understand that, but it's great to hear, how things are going and how, you're progressing through that. Were you ever concerned that, physics or science or anything, were you ever overwhelmed with any of that, or you just grew comfortable with that through the clubs and the classes and the work you did in high school or even in middle school?
Funny enough, I actually did have one moment where I was like, am I sure I want to do physics? And it was when I shadowed a team of researchers at Michigan State University, the National Superconducting Cyclotron Laboratory that they have, particle accelerator that they have right on campus. And the work they were doing was fascinating. But out of this team of like 20 people, there was not one single woman in the room. And I was like, is this an environment I want to be part of? But then I was like, you know what? I can be part of that environment and I can change that. And in the end, even though I kind of faltered while I was there, I ended up realizing that this was like a change that I could make. And I could enter the research field and be a role model for people like me.
And it wasn't, I'm sure, all a straight line through your um, high school years. I'm sure there was times you got discouraged and, didn't get the straight A grades that you were hoping for, but you recovered, no doubt, and you made it successfully so far where you're going. So one thing that I'll bet you did pretty well is you were organized, right? I know a lot of successful people and they're pretty well organized. Could you tell us a little bit about, submitting the application, how to get that all lined up? But what was that process that you followed that you maybe could share with the listeners here? What do you think, is most important thing to mention if you were going after a scholarship such as this nice $20,000 one from the Detroit section here?
Yeah, one of my biggest tips, honestly, is to not be overwhelmed by what seems like a lot of work to fill this out. There's the information section, there's the extracurricular section, there's the essay section. But one of honestly the biggest advantages of this is that it is built like every other scholarship application you will apply to. And it's even built like all of the college applications that a lot of you have already filled out.
Mhm.
So honestly, the process was made so much easier just by me taking my essays that already existed from applying to so many colleges and just taking out the bits that mattered for this scholarship and just splicing them together. It is such a time sink to just write a new essay from scratch every time you need to write one. So yeah, one of my biggest tips is to just use what you already have, and that is a great resource for you.
Another thing, besides those essays, I know that's a lot of work, takes a lot of time to do a good job. You won't probably want to get people to review that and give you a critique, and maybe your teachers did that. So I think references is also another thing that is always a challenge. How did you approach going out, reaching out to, I guess, your teachers or those in the community here to get references to put on that application? Was it just, a piece of cake, or you had to think about that a little bit?
Well, I was lucky that the teacher that I had for the subject that I wanted to go into, physics, was also the teacher that I had for an extracurricular that I had a leadership role in. So I was a captain of the Science Olympiad team. So my physics teacher that I mentioned before already saw like the leadership side of me, and she could speak to that as well as my academic side. So in that sense, I was very lucky. But as far as choosing a teacher, I would definitely say to choose a teacher that you have spent a lot of time engaging with in the classroom. For example, choose one of your teachers that you always ask good questions in class and you ask them homework questions. And honestly, don't necessarily choose the teacher of the subject that you do best in. For
Mm.
example, if you're not struggling in math at all and all you do is sit in class, daydream, turn in your tests, get 100%, don't ask that teacher. That teacher can say, yeah, this kid is good at math, but can they speak to your passion? Can they speak to your drive? Can they speak to your ambition? If you've been getting, A's on every test, they can't speak to the parts of you that are not just your grades, You're
Mhm.
also turning in your transcript, right? So SAE already sees that you're getting these grades. It's more important, honestly, to ask a teacher that has seen you struggle and has seen you overcome
Mhm.
barriers.
I think that's an outstanding point. Now, part of the challenge that I think maybe most of us have, certainly I know students in certain categories have challenges to be outgoing, to actually make that outreach. And I guess I have to approach that step by step as well. I mean, you didn't actually become a outgoing young lady like you are today, right? You had to kind of think about that and make some steps forward and come outside of your, normal comfort zone. And is there something there that you might relate to our audience of a helpful hint in that area too?
Yeah, of course. So honestly, here, it's never too early to start building relationships with your teachers and other adults who can write you letters of recommendation, because there are so many ways to do this. I'm sure you've all heard this 1,000 times before, participating in class, asking questions, attending office hours or like after school tutoring sessions. All of these things matter, and your teachers notice these things. They notice that you're engaged in class. Um, Also, if you are genuinely interested in something, then you should share that genuine interest with your teacher. For example, in physics, I was reading, a bunch of random popular science articles about quantum physics and particle physics as they were coming out. And because I found this super interesting and I didn't understand, the entire article, obviously, but I would take this article, I would send it to my physics teacher, be like, hey, this is cool. Like, is there something that you find interesting here? Like, what's happening here? And I would have like genuine conversations with my teacher about these things that were just, only marginally related to class topics. And I didn't even, think of that as a method to get a better reference. But at the end of the year, I was presented with the physics department award. And in her speech, my teacher mentioned my kind of extracurricular physics interests and the fact that I went kind of like above the classroom level, and that indicated a genuine interest in physics. So, yeah, it's
It's passion.
definitely worth it.
Passion. And I think even beyond what you're mentioning, probably that finding your passion is also another challenge. And just explore. You try a few things. Maybe like playing an instrument, I guess. Perhaps you can. I don't know if you play an instrument, but if you try the violin, you don't like that. Maybe the keyboard, maybe the woodwinds, something like that. And finally, there's clicking going on, and something's starting to stick, and then by the way, stick with it, right? That's another part of the recommendation I'll bet you would give too. What would you recommend for your parents? Do you have any advice for for your parents out there in the audience who have a student that they'd like to at least try to work in the STEM area and maybe apply for the scholarships here? What would your parental advice be?
My advice to parents would be two things: support and encouragement. And this doesn't mean like getting on your kid's case to do their scholarship applications every single day. It's more just you need to kind of like emphasize that this scholarship isn't impossible to get. One of the reasons that I even got it was because my mom was like, but what if you get it? You know, I was like, I'm not going to be a mechanical engineer. You know, I'm not going to, I'm not going to work on cars. Like there's no chance that they're going to give me this scholarship. But my mom said, you'd be surprised. And engineering really is a broad field. So don't get discouraged just if your interest is chemical engineering, you know, that's still engineering. If it's any sort of environmental engineering even, you know, that is still engineering. Anything that has anything to do with possible applications, such as my research applications, that is STEM and it's important in engineering. So, but again, right, it's also the support that's necessary because seniors have a lot on their plates. They have college applications, they have other scholarships, and then they have school, you know, especially this year with everything being virtual. It's very, very hard to keep focus. So some of my advice would be to encourage your children to start early and take this process in chunks. One of the things I struggled the most with was focus and just being able to sit down and crank out an application. You know, I would just like lose my train of thought and not be able to work on anything for an hour. But if I just sat down and went, okay, today I'm going to put in my address, you know, and that takes 5 minutes, but I'm done with it, right? And then the next day I put in my extracurriculars, you know, and then I'm done with it. And that way, as you like chip away at the application bit by bit, you kind of get it over with. And in this way, you can work on even 1 or 2 scholarship applications in tandem. You know, like one day you fill out the address section on both of the scholarships, and that makes it go faster because you're kind of like horizontally filling out the forms. And then again, you don't like lose your focus. So starting early would definitely be some of my advice.
Yeah, excellent advice. I think at anything we take on in our lives. So part of the information that the audience ought to know too is that the deadline is coming up. It's the 31st of March, 2021. This is a new method that the SAE Detroit section is using. It's all online. So you can, at the end of the presentation today, you'll see links to where you can get that information to apply or coordinate that through the SAE Detroit section staff, and they'd certainly be able to help you answer any questions there. Let's move on then to, well, you've succeeded, you've won. You know, you got to work hard, of course, keep those grades up. What's next? What's next? And you know, we have other scholarship winners. This young lady actually is a professional engineer here in the Detroit area. She's active in the SAE Detroit section. The section has student memberships as well as professional memberships after you graduate. What do you feel, where's your pathway going to take you, Bianca, after graduation? Maybe back to Detroit, maybe somewhere else? I hope you still engage with SAE in some way.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be going to graduate school after my undergrad, maybe with a few years of research in between, we'll see. But I definitely will be going into the research field and working to develop, honestly, whatever I decide, because I still have 4 years of undergraduate school and I don't have to narrow down my path until, you know, I'm working on any further degrees. So all I know so far is that I'll be doing physics, and regardless of what field of physics I'm doing, I will be kind of collaborating in an interdisciplinary way, because that is one of my biggest passions, honestly, is working interdisciplinarily. I care a lot about environmental issues, and I also have an interest in chemistry and in, you know, chemical engineering. So no matter what I end up doing, I just know that I will be working with other fields and kind of incorporating like all these different fields of knowledge into my path and my path through research. And yeah, that is my dream.
Well, that's super exciting. And I know you're sitting in a good spot to do that. Before we wrap this up, though, I want you to reach way back into your middle school years and, in the early history where you just kind of got that spark and that initiative as, that you never realized where you might be or might be going, at that point in time. SAE does have, in our Detroit section, we're very much promoting STEM, and SAE also has initiatives for young ladies, especially looking for more information, learn more about the STEM professions that they can get involved into. Do you remember how you first got that spark way back when, and that you kept burning and getting brighter now through college?
My spark honestly started with astronomy. I asked for a telescope for Christmas when I was like 5 or 6, and I got it. And I think my parents, they're both engineers. They had so much fun, figuring out the telescope with me. And then, so I kind of had this interest in science very early on. I loved nature too. So again, that interest in environmental issues. But I think the first time I really realized that science was what I wanted to do for a career was while watching actually a documentary. It was the Neil deGrasse Tyson reboot of Carl Sagan's Cosmos series. And it was just so engaging. I was in middle school probably at the time. And he took these concepts that were so, out of the world, literally, and he, translated them into popular science. So honestly, I believe that media is one of the most important ways to get people engaged, especially young people engaged in science, and finding ways to translate these concepts into something that is more tangible. And yeah, from there, that's where I first learned about the concept of modern physics, theoretical physics, particles, nuclear research. And from then on, I just kind of aimed there and kept going. So here I am.
Aim high, as they say, and you'll sometimes hit the stars, maybe you'll miss, but you're still going to have fun and excitement along the way. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing that journey that you're still on, and I'm sure be very successful. And the environmental issues that are in front of us today, the students out there that want to learn more about science and technology. So you're helping that along too. So we appreciate that. The SAE Detroit section has some links here of our upcoming events, and we'll share that information with you on the screen. You can catch us on, speaking of social and online, that we got them all, the social media here. Good old email even works there at your contact. If you'd like to get a hold of myself or anyone in the Detroit section, ask some further questions, help you along the way. Glad to help you out. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Thank you again, Bianca. And we look forward to your future career. We'd like to reach back to you here maybe in a couple years after graduation and see how you're doing. So good luck to you all in the field, and thank you again.
Thank you for having me.